Hey everyone, welcome to the training. We've got quite a few people waiting for me to get started. I don't want to delay this any longer. We got a lot of material to cover in a very short period of time. So let's get going. Let me switch over to my slide deck and we can jump into this training. 3 recession-proof flipping strategies you can implement with just a laptop, a car, and a tank of gas. And by the end of this webinar, you'll know how to earn $10,000 to $15,000 per month flipping houses with just a car, a laptop, and a tank of gas. You'll know where to find the most motivated sellers in your market for free. You like free, right? And you'll also know how to close deals without paying off the seller's mortgage. So a little bit about me real quickly. If you don't know, I'm Bigger Pockets podcast guest number 1. You want to go back and listen to that podcast. I think that was recorded about 10 years ago. I talk about building a successful house flipping business and losing millions. I'm going to actually tell you a little bit about that and what I learned from that and what's going on now with the current economy and a looming recession. I was also featured in articles by the USA Today, Realtor.com, Fortune Magazine, and Reuters. I actually just published a book earlier this year called Foreclosure Secrets, and I've helped hundreds of clients all over the country start or scale their house flipping businesses. I'm married. My wife and I have been married 24 years. We have 2 beautiful daughters, one in college, one about to graduate from high school next year. So that's it. That's enough about me. Let's get into the training. So you may be wondering, okay, who is this for? Well, if you're a wholesaler and you're looking for a safer and more profitable way to find deals in 2023 and beyond, this is for you. You're in the right place. If you're a fix and flip investor like me and you're looking for higher margins without risking a whole lot of capital, you're in the right place here tonight. And if you're a buy and hold investor that needs better cash on cash returns, this training is definitely for you. So first, a little history about recessions, housing crashes, that kind of thing. There's a quote here by George Santayana talking about how those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. I think it's important. I give you a very tiny, like 3-minute history lesson here on the last housing market crash, which I personally went through, and I'll tell you more about here in a second, and how it compares to 2022, 2023, and beyond. So from 2002 to 2007, I built a huge real estate portfolio, $16 million real estate portfolio at a net worth of $8 million. And the money that I earned, that I was generating, was coming primarily from wholesaling and fixing and flipping houses. And then what I would do is I would take that money and I would buy rental properties and do rentals, lease options, that kind of thing for wealth generation. Then, of course, August of 2007, a lot of people say the housing market crash of 2008. For me, I can remember very vividly it starting in August of 2007 is when the crash hit home for me. And this is what happened. From 07 to 09, real estate values dropped by 55%. Now, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. It was higher, I know, in some states, slightly higher and lower in others. But for us here in Phoenix, it was about 55%. My net worth went from being $8 million to a negative $2 million. Yeah, that sucked. I had to sell my house, my personal residence, my vacation home, my Mercedes, my $100,000 Mercedes, my $10,000 Rolex watch. Yeah, I was a bit of an egomaniac. I don't even wear a watch anymore, and I drive a Jeep Wrangler. So I've definitely been humbled by that experience and just live a little more humble lifestyle than I did back then. Not that there's anything wrong with these things, but anyway, we can talk about that another time. So what went wrong? What went wrong in the housing market to cause this crash, this huge bubble bursting 2007, 2008? Well, there's really 4 reasons this happened. Number one, we had back then what were called stated income liar loans. Basically, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a mortgage to buy a house, and not just your personal residence, but an investment property as well. All you had to do was write down on a piece of paper how much money you earned. They didn't verify or check this with W-2 statements or anything like that. You could just say you made a certain amount of money, and they would give you a loan based on that amount. We also had adjustable rate mortgages. So the interest rates on these mortgages fluctuated up and down, and they allowed you to pay interest only. So your payment was much smaller, yes, but you weren't paying down any principal. You weren't building any equity in your property when you were buying houses back in 05 to 07. We also were lending money to anybody without any money. You could basically buy $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 houses and put $0 down. And then lastly, most of the buyers, especially here in Phoenix where I lived, over half of them were investor buyers. So guess what? What that means is it was easy for them to just kind of walk away from these properties. Borrowers eventually couldn't make their payments. Subprime lenders went completely out of business, and the bubble burst. And really the big reason why is because no one had any skin in the game. People who bought homes to live in didn't put any money down, so it was easy to justify just walking away when they got underwater. Same thing certainly for investor buyers or speculative buyers who were buying houses and then hoping that they would just go up in value, in 6 months, and they could turn around and flip them. They had no skin in the game, so it was easy to just kind of walk away and say, screw it, I'll let the bank foreclose on me. Now, if you want more insight on all this unfolded, if you're into history like I am, you're kind of a geek when it comes to housing market stuff, you can check out Michael Lewis's book, The Big Short, the movie. They made a movie out of it several years later, and I think it's on Netflix or Amazon Prime. Great movie, by the way. And then there's also a book by Andrew Ross Sorkin called Too Big to Fail. These all kind of explain in a lot more detail than I just did how the housing market crashed and a lot of the mistakes that our federal government made and investment banks and ratings agencies made when it came to creating these credit default swaps and all this stuff. I don't want to get into all that. I want to get into and today look forward to what we're going to be working on or what we should be shifting our focus on here today and in the future. All right, so you're probably wondering, will there be another housing market crash in 2023? I say no. I don't believe there will be a housing market crash. There's definitely a correction taking place, but I do not see a bubble bursting. And there are 4 reasons why I believe this. So if you compare 2007 to 2022 and 23 and beyond, there's 4 reasons. Again, reason 1, 2007, 2008, and just before that, we had stated income liar loans and very loose underwriting criteria. I mean, there was no underwriting criteria. You could just, again, say what it is you were making and they would give you a loan based on that amount. Going this year, 2022, 23, beyond, and even going back the last decade, the government changed the way underwriting laws are written and banks really tightened things up. So now all loans are fully vetted. I mean, if you've applied for a home mortgage or you have a home mortgage yourself right now, it's a pretty stringent process you have to go through. You have to provide W-2s, statements from your investment accounts. Any dime that you earn has to be written on a piece of paper and verified with the IRS. So there's very strict underwriting. So that's a big difference between what we were seeing back in 07, 08, and before that. Reason number 2, there were adjustable rate mortgage, interest-only mortgages, 2007, 2008, 2005, going back. Today, we have fixed rate, principal, interest, tax, insurance mortgages. So with lower rates, like 4% or less. So people that have bought houses or have refinanced in the last 5, 6, 7 years have excellent low interest rates, and they're building equity in their homes because they're paying down principal as they go. 2007 and 8, nobody was paying any principal down. They were just staying right where they were with their principal balance on their mortgage. So reason 3, in 2007, 2008, there were no money down loans. And today, here in the last 6, 7, 8 years, it's predominantly in the market cash buyers or people who make very large down payments, or at least go the conventional route, put 20% down, or even FHA requires 3% down. So they have skin in the game. They're far less likely to just kind of walk away from their house and allow a crash to happen. And then finally, reason 4, in 2007, 8, lots of investor buyers in the market, very speculative types of people making a bet that the housing market was going to appreciate. And when it didn't, boom, they just walked away. Most of the home buyers that have been purchasing homes all over the country the last 8, 9, 10 years are mostly owner occupants. So that's why I don't believe there's going to be a housing market crash. Like I said, a correction, yes, crash, no. Well, whether it be a recession, I don't know that. The definition of a recession is when your neighbor loses their job. A depression is when you lose yours. Bad joke there. But if there is a recession, and some people say there is one because we've had a couple of quarters of GDP decline or negative growth, but then last quarter it was a positive growth. So who knows? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. But I can tell you this: the Federal Reserve, they're hell bent on getting us to a point where we have job loss. They want to see unemployment figures increase. And that's the only way they're going to start lowering rates, because they believe that's how you curb inflation, is to get people to lose their jobs. I think it's disgusting. I hate the idea that we have a branch or a department of our federal government, or whatever you want to call it, that wants people and is trying to create factors where people will lose their job. It's disgusting to me, but that's a discussion for another day. But this article is from Housing Wire. This says here, the Fed is waiting for job loss recession to start lowering rates. So we're going to see a recession, because that's what our federal government and that's what the Federal Bank Reserve, that's what they want to happen. So what causes borrowers to default on mortgages? Well, it's job loss, right? And this is a quote from a report done by the National Bureau of Economic Research. Why do borrowers default on mortgages? We find that 70% are driven solely by negative life events. Number one negative life event, what is it? Job loss, right? So that's cash flow defaults. Like, you have a cash flow default if you're not making money because you lose your job. So I suspect if we're not in a recession, we will be in one soon. But there is a big difference between a housing market crash and a job loss recession, right? So, but just because there's no crash doesn't mean there won't be any opportunity. Within a recession brings opportunity, certainly for real estate investors like us. So, and there's a big but, right? And I made this but as big as possible. I like big buts. In a declining market with high interest rates and lower demand, if you keep doing things the old way, you're going to lose your assets, just like I did, right? So I don't want that to happen to you, which is why I put this training together and wanted to talk to you about the 3 recession-proof strategies you can use. So let's talk about the old way real quick. If you're a wholesaler and you're watching this training right now, you know kind of the old way, right? You're probably spending $5,000, $10,000 per month or more on direct mail and text message blasting to generate leads. Maybe you're wasting hours sifting through unmotivated seller leads, right? And you're assigning properties that you do get under contract with tiny margins to cash buyers, to fix and flip investors like me, and you're only earning $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a deal, or maybe you're having trouble getting deals at all this way. That's the old way, and this sucks. Frankly, I feel bad for you if you're in this situation. If you're like me and you're a fix and flip investor, this is kind of the way I've been having to do it here for the last 3-4 years. You buy properties with tiny margins from wholesalers on and off the MLS. You use high interest rate hard money loans to fund the purchase, which is heavy duty holding costs there involved in holding a fix and flip. And then you're struggling to find affordable contractors to do big ticket repairs. The material costs are expensive as well, but the big ticket repairs, electrical, plumbing, roofing, windows, those types of things, right? So if you're doing it this way, or you're planning on doing it this way going into a recession, you could be hurting. You could be losing your assets. So there is a new way. Are you guys Star Wars fans? Anyone here say yes? Yeah? A few of you? Okay. Oh, I love all the Star Wars movies, and I love all the side stories that they're doing now with Alderaan and The Mandalorian. So I love The Mandalorian. It's probably my favorite of all the new ones. And he has a saying, or the Mandalorians have a saying, "This is the way." Well, so I kind of piggybacked off that. The new way. This is the way. The new way to do it. So let's talk about recession-proof strategy number 1. And I'm talking about subject to financing. And I know as soon as you see this, you're like, oh boy, come on, Marty. I know this has been around forever and it's not a new way. So maybe it's just a different way than you've been doing it. But I'll tell you this, if you've never done a subject to deal or understand how to make money flipping a subject to deal, then it's certainly new to you. And I believe, there's lots of people out there on Facebook and Instagram talking about creative financing and subject to. Some people act like they're the ones who invented it, but the fact of the matter is it has been around a long time, but it doesn't always work in certain kinds of economies or certain kinds of markets. But now is the time, right? This is a great recession-proof strategy. But let me just explain to you kind of the mechanics of a subject to deal real quick if you don't know how they work. If you do, just bear with me for 60 seconds while I explain it to people who don't. When you buy a house, the traditional way, like a normal way, you buy the house and the previous owner signs a deed of the house from themselves over to you, and then you get a deed of trust or a mortgage on the property. You sign that paperwork and boom, you're the new owner of the house. Let's just say you're going to sell a house the traditional way. When you go to sell the house, you sign the deed and transfer the deed to the new owner. They get a new deed of trust and mortgage, and yours gets paid in full. That's how it works normally. But when you buy a house, subject to, the deed is transferred from the previous owner to you, but their deed of trust or mortgage remains in their name. It remains in the previous owner's name. And there's some huge advantages to this. So when you buy subject to, so you retain that seller's principal loan balance, you retain that seller's low interest rate, and if they've bought the house or refinanced the house in the last 5, 6, 7 years, that interest rate is going to be 4% or less. You retain the seller's low payment, right? Because it's, again, 4% or less. You don't have to qualify for the loan. You don't have to do any kind of credit check, and they don't check your credit or care what your credit check is. So there's no qualifying for the loan. And then lastly, there's little cash required when you do a subject to. It's the least amount you can negotiate with the seller of the property. Oh, here's why this strategy is recession-proof. And I'm going to give you a case study. This is a subject to deal. It's been a while, but this is one of the first subject to deals I did. But these are easily, this strategy works, has always worked, but it especially works in a market like we have today. This is a subject to plus lease option strategy. I'm just going to quickly go through it. And this is how you can make $5,000 to $10,000 a month or more with just a car, a laptop, and a tank of gas, right? So you can easily do this with this strategy right now, and you hardly need any money in your bank account. So here's how it works. Here's the deal I did. So this was a little while ago, but it still applies today. Just full disclosure. So I bought the house from the seller for $250,000. They had an underlying mortgage of $245,000. So they were basically underwater on this house. I mean, if they tried to sell it with a realtor, they would have to come out of pocket $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 just so they could cover all the commissions, holding costs, closing costs, that kind of thing. So I agreed to buy it for $250,000. The loan amount was $245,000. So I gave the seller $5,000. Their interest rate was 3% and their monthly payment was $1,400. So I found a lease option buyer. I found a lease option tenant. They agreed to give me an option to buy, or they agreed to buy it on an option for $275,000. Now this is 3 years after the fact. So they had 3 years to exercise their option for $275,000. They gave me a non-refundable deposit of $15,000 and agreed to a monthly payment of $1,700. So check this out. Look at the very bottom of the slide here. I net, in about 30 days, I net $10,000 in profit, the difference between their non-refundable deposit and the cash I gave the seller. I net $10,000. I got $300 a month in cash flow, and when they eventually exercised their option 3 years later, made another $25,000 after that. Pretty sweet deal, right? Now, worst case scenario, let's say you do a deal like this and you can't find a lease option tenant, right? Worst case scenario, you could just buy it for $250,000, your loan amount's $245,000, you give the seller $5,000, your interest rate's only 3%, monthly payment's $1,400, you rent it, just do a straight up rental for $1,700 a month, which in this market right now is a piece of cake. Your monthly cash flow is $300. That's a 72% annualized return. If you invest $5,000 and in a year make $3,600, right? $300 times 12 is $3,600. Divide that by 5,000. It's a 72% annualized return. Pretty sweet. So you don't need a whole lot of money in your bank account to do a deal like this. So just imagine, right? I mean, if you did 6 of these deals per year, 6, you'd make $60,000 and $1,800 a month in cash flow. So that's a great way to go. It's a great recession-proof strategy you can implement right now. Here's recession-proof strategy number 2. Pre-foreclosures. Again, this is not new, okay, but it's certainly not something that's on a lot of people's radar right now and hasn't been. But I love pre-foreclosures. Here's another article from Housing Wire talking about a foreclosure spike coming in the next few months. Pandemic backlog of serious distressed mortgages expected to fuel the increase. Now there's just below that, it says it's going to remain below a historical average, but still there is a spike of foreclosures coming. Remember what I talked about with you earlier. The Federal Reserve wants to see people lose their jobs, and they want to see inflation reduced. And the only way to do that is to get people out of work, right? And to essentially cause a recession, a job loss recession. So that could be bad news for you if you have a job and you're about to lose it, but it's good news for real estate investors because it does create opportunity, sadly, but it does. Again, it it makes me sick that they are trying to get people out of work, but that is what it is. So I can tell you this, regardless of what's going on with the economy, there will always be foreclosures, always. Maybe you're wondering, what is a pre-foreclosure? Now, again, if you know what a pre-foreclosure is and exactly how it works, just give me 60 seconds or so to explain it to the people here who are watching tonight that don't exactly know how it goes about, or the process, right? So what happens in a pre-foreclosure, the borrower falls 90 to 120 days past due on their mortgage. The lender starts foreclosure proceedings, okay? Now the borrower is on the clock. Now, depending on what state you live in, the borrower could have 30 days to bring their loan current. They could have 60 days, 90 days. In some states, it could be a year, 2, or more, but they are on the clock, all right? And they really only have 2 choices to stop the foreclosure. They must pay off the loan or bring it current. That is the only way. See, this is the only way to stop a foreclosure. So this is where you come in, right? You are the white knight on the chessboard, right? You're the white knight. You come to the rescue. When you work out a deal with a seller in foreclosure with your help, that seller avoids getting a nasty foreclosure on their credit report. They get cash at closing, and they get extra time to find a place to live and move out with dignity. You see, what happens is when a seller or a homeowner allows their house to get foreclosed on, all of a sudden they go from having just a 90 to 120 day past due, negative mark on their credit report, to having an actual foreclosure on their credit report, which will follow them for 7 years. The seller gets cash at closing if you buy it from them prior to the auction. If the house goes to auction, that auction bidder, all the money that they agree to pay, that goes back to the bank. The seller gets nothing. Now, there are some weird scenarios and some hoops you'd have to jump through if there was what we call surplus funds or excess proceeds, but that doesn't help the owner of the house right there at that moment when they get foreclosed on. It could be months or years if there's extra money available to them if the third-party bidder at the auction pays more than what's owed on the property. But that's too confusing, and again, it doesn't help the owner of the house at that moment in time. When you show up and you give them cash at closing, that helps them. And the worst part about this is an auction bidder, when they buy it, the seller or the owner of the home now is a squatter. As soon as that auction takes place and the third party gets the deed to the house, that person living in the house isn't the owner anymore. They're not a tenant, they're a squatter. And the auction bidder will treat them as such and just throw them out on the street. And it can be pretty ugly. 7-10 days after the sale takes place, the seller or the owner, the former owner of their house, has no ability to find a new place to live. They just get kicked out onto the street. And that really sucks. So here's the best part of this for you. You create a win-win for you and the seller of the house. That's really cool. And then you could turn around, you could quickly wholesale the property for $10,000 to $15,000 or more than you paid for it. Or if you're a fix and flip investor like me, you can fix and flip the house because you got a huge margin on the deal. You're dealing with a homeowner who's in foreclosure. They've only got a few days or weeks left until the sale. So chances are you've negotiated a very smart price for the property. But wait, there's more. Just like the subject to approach, all you need to buy pre-foreclosures and start flipping them is a laptop, a car, and a tank of gas. And I'll talk more about that and how this works with foreclosures or pre-foreclosures in a few minutes. But here's why this is recession-proof. It costs nothing to market to homeowners in foreclosure. You can find them through your county, either on a website or through public record searches for absolutely free. And homeowners in foreclosure are the most motivated sellers, right? I don't know about you guys, but I hate direct mail, text message blasting. I hate the bandit signs, all the guerrilla marketing stuff, because it mostly attracts, it's like it throws out a wide net, and it mostly attracts people who are unmotivated. They're tire kickers. They're people who are hoping you're a sucker and you're going to overpay for their house. I don't like dealing with people like that. I only like dealing with the most motivated sellers in my market. So there's no more wasting time on the phone with tire kickers, because that stuff just doesn't work, especially not going to work as we kind of morph into a recession or a declining market. So here's the really cool part. Your competition doesn't know how to do this. Or let me just say this, maybe your competition does kind of know how to do this, but they're doing it the wrong way. You see, 99% of homeowners in foreclosure, they pay off their loan or bring it current prior to the auction. And your competition is focused on these 99%. They're not focused on the 1% who will eventually lose their house to the auction if you don't help them out. And the reason why is because the paid lists that your competition are getting, they're outdated and inaccurate. Easy for me to say. Because what's happening is, as soon as the foreclosure process starts and these notices are filed and these list companies start compiling all this information, these people start bringing their loans current or paying their loans off, and they're not in foreclosure anymore. And so when you text blast them or send them a letter, they're going to get really pissed off at you because they're like, hey, I'm not in foreclosure anymore. Stop bothering me. So you're wasting time and money marketing to the 99%. See, and that's the thing. Most investors, they try to be first when last is better. You don't want to market or waste time trying to contact sellers when they're not in foreclosure anymore, which is the 99%. You want to focus on the 1%. So this is how you do that. You scrape the list. When you get the list of foreclosures, either from your county website or however it is you do it, you want to check with the foreclosing attorney, either check on their website or call their number and see if the foreclosure case is still pending, right? And if it is, then you try to make contact with that seller, either a letter, a text message blast, or you just go knock on their door, or do all three. I would say do all three. So you want to get there last. I would say start at 30 days prior to the auction, and you just want to make sure that the house is either occupied or vacant, because if it's vacant, then you could start looking for the owner of the house and trying to track them down prior to the auction. That gives you enough time. But you stop by 30 days, buy the house just to make sure it's either vacant or occupied. If it's, again, vacant, you start looking for the homeowner. If it's occupied, maybe you wait a few more weeks. You get there about 7 to 10 days before the auction. Then again, 3 days, 2 days, and 1 day. And you keep going back until the seller of that house, you keep sending letters, dropping off letters, text messaging, or stopping by the house until that seller goes, hey, go away, pound sand, I've got it taken care of. Or they say, no, please help me. I need your help. Buy my house from me. Does that make sense? Cool. All right. Just imagine for a second. You find a foreclosure notice on your county website. You call the attorney, right? And you verify the case is still active. You drive by the house a week or so before the auction, contact the owner, and they say, yes, I need help. I need to sell this house. And you make a deal. How cool is that, right? It happens. I've got a coaching client. This is Shane. He's in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So the photo of him and I there kind of on the bottom left, that's a different house that he actually bought at a sheriff's sale. But the two photos above with the blue sky, that with the two garage doors, and then the photo to the right, that's a duplex that he bought directly from a homeowner in foreclosure. So he was out driving around looking at some houses that he knew were in foreclosure, and he did just what I just told you to do. He scraped his list, saw this house was still up for auction. It was about 10 days before the auction. He just knocked on the door, and the seller said, yeah, I know I'm in a bad spot. I need to sell and get out of this foreclosure mess I'm in. So Shane said, well, I think we can make a deal. So the bottom right there, you'll see the circle. That's what Shane paid for the house. The top with the arrow, that's what he sold it for. Again, if you look at the photos, there's really nothing special. This is actually a duplex. But he didn't do anything as far as rehab goes to the house. He repainted it and he put in new carpet. He kept the existing cabinets, the tile. It was in okay shape, probably needed some updating, but he's like, you know what? I don't want to mess around with trying to find expensive trades like electricians and plumbers and gut the kitchen and rewire the whole house. He just wanted to keep it really simple, and he was able to because he put a really sweet deal together with a seller in foreclosure. We're working with a house that didn't need a lot of extra updates to get on the market and get it sold. And then to the top left, you'll see that's the screenshot from the profit and loss statement in his QuickBooks report. He made $47,610.45. Pretty sweet, right? And all because he did those three things. He scraped his list, he contacted the seller, and he made the deal, right? And he made 47 grand. I mean, that's a lot of money, guys. If you did, just imagine if you did 2 of those a year, 3 of those a year, that's it, right? I mean, you're talking about a 6-figure income right there with just a car, a laptop, and a tank of gas. Pretty sweet, right? So here's the best part though. Like if you're watching this right now and you're like, yeah, I want to fix and flip. Well, so do I. I want to fix and flip houses that are easy, right? That don't cost a lot of money. I don't have to call a lot of trades. And that's what Shane did here. His rehab budget was just $17,000. There was no big ticket repairs. And the only trades he had to hire were a painter and a flooring installer. So that's my kind of fix and flip, right? I'm not really into HGTV rehabs right now because, again, material costs are high, labor costs are high, the cost of money is high, So I'd rather just, if I'm going to fix and flip, kind of do simpler projects I can get in and out very quickly like Shane did here. All right, let's talk about recession-proof strategy number 3. This is my very favorite one of them all. It is a pre-foreclosure plus subject to strategy. Again, my very favorite. So here's how it works. I'm actually going to take you through a deal one of my other coaching clients, Kyle, did, just so you can see how the mechanics of this works. So it's kind of like a case study, right? So Kyle found an active foreclosure. Now he's in Arizona here where I am, so that's why we were able to kind of hang out and have coffee. And there's his laptop and his car and his tank of gas are out in the parking lot. So we met at a coffee shop not far from my house to talk about this deal he put together so I could explain it, the mechanics of it to you guys. So Kyle found an active foreclosure. He contacted the seller 1 week before the auction. He put the house under contract with the seller and he stopped the foreclosure and purchased the property. So just to give you some kind of high level numbers, this is just from Zillow. You can see the sold price, he paid $238,260 is the deal he put together on it. Zestimate, which, give or take 10% here with Zillow, it's $434,600. So it's $200,000 in margin on this property. He took it subject to the existing mortgage, and that payment, that's a screenshot from the bank, is $1,018.38. Now, full disclosure here, this house is a mess. It's in a very nice part of town and a great school district, but it's definitely the ugliest house on the street, and it needs a lot of work, probably $100,000 plus in rehab. It needs a new roof. It needs a new garage door. It needs paint. It needs all new windows. It needs a complete gut job on the inside. I mean, nothing's been done to this house in like 40 years. So it's in pretty bad shape, but there's still a really nice margin. Would you agree? Right? Would you guys like to put a deal like this together? Yeah? Of course. Absolutely. Say yes. Yes, of course you would. So here are the terms of it, this subject to deal. So the loan amount was $216,260. The reinstatement was $12,000. What's a reinstatement? That is the amount of money that Kyle had to send to the lender to bring the loan current. That $12,000 included the past due payments, the late penalties, interest, and legal fees. It was $12,000. So as soon as he sent that to the bank, they stopped the foreclosure. Okay, so that's what a reinstatement is. He also agreed at the closing, which took place like literally the day before the auction, to give the seller $10,000. So the total price was $238,260. Monthly payment, $1,018. The interest rate on that loan is 3%. So for $22,000, that's how much it took to close this deal. Kyle locked up a deal with $200,000 in margin. Not bad, right? Do you guys like to do deals like that? Say yes. Yeah, of course you would. Now think about this. Think of the exit strategies Kyle now has with this property. He could wholesale the house and make a quick $10,000 to $15,000 to a fix and flip investor who would go in and do the $100,000 rehab. He could fix and flip the house himself, and after the $100K or so rehab, walk away with 50, 60 grand. Or he could decide to rehab the house and keep it as a rental and earn $400 to $600 per month. Now, the wholesale strategy works great, and that's what Kyle did with this property. But think about it like this. If you were going to fix and flip this house, okay, and say Kyle wholesaled it to a fix and flipper, all right? Think about this. He could wholesale it to the fix and flip investor and sign over the deed one more time, allow the buyer, the fix and flip investor, to take it subject to, just like he did, leave that underlying mortgage in place, okay? So now all the fix and flip investor has to do is get a small hard money loan for the rehab. That's it. Or maybe they've got 75 to 100 grand just on a HELOC or whatever, but they don't have to get a hard money loan to buy the property for $238,000 and get money for the rehab. All they have to do is get a small loan or a hard money loan for the rehab. So, the holding costs are drastically reduced. So I love this as a fix and flip investor. Kyle was to wholesale this deal to me. It would be pretty sweet, right? All I would have to do is figure out how to come up with the rehab costs, and the rest of the money I'm borrowing at 3%. It's really, really sweet deal. And again, if Kyle decided just to kind of fix the house up and keep it as a rental, he could kind of do the same thing. He could figure out a way to get a small loan, a construction loan, to do the rehab, and then refinance the whole thing and get a new loan, or leave the existing loan in place. He's going to cash flow $400 to $600 a month or more. So all the way around, recession-proof deal, right? All the way. Can you see why? Right? Can you see why this is recession-proof? Cool. What I'm really proud about, though, is that Kyle did all of this 1 week, in just 1 week. See, we started working together, and Kyle was already going out and doing the contacting of sellers. But the thing he was not doing is he wasn't scraping the list. So he was trying to contact sellers who weren't in foreclosure anymore and wasting a lot of time. As soon as I straightened him out on that, within 1 week of being my client, and with just a laptop and a car, tank of gas, he locked up this deal with $200,000 in gross margin. So really, really sweet. So maybe you're sitting here thinking, okay, all this sounds great, but you don't believe anyone would do a subject to. I mean, do you believe really no one will do a subject to deal in a declining housing market? Do you believe that? Because, I mean, there's plenty of people who will. Let me tell you, there are homeowners that need to relocate, but don't have a lot of equity, who bought in the last 12 to 18 months, right? If they tried to sell their house right now, they would lose money. They would have to write a check for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to get out from underneath it. So you can bet people who need to relocate out of your housing market would be interested in this type of arrangement with you. And when I got started, this is how I was finding prospects. I was looking for people I knew had to move and didn't have a lot of equity in their houses and doing subject to deals. And I made a pretty good living right out of the gate with not any money or very little money out of my pocket with this strategy. There are subject to prospects. You can go to realtors who have listings that are over 90 days. If you can help these realtors get these listings off their plate and get their client out from underneath their homes, then that's a great strategy as well. And I just showed you with Kyle. I mean, you talk to a homeowner in foreclosure who's anywhere between 24 hours and 14 days away from auction, they are absolutely going to be interested in doing a subject to deal. If the alternative is they get foreclosed on, their house sells at auction, they get no money at all, and they get no time to move out. So there's tons and tons of subject to prospects out there right now based on where we're at. I mean, do you believe there are no foreclosures? Do you really believe there's no foreclosures in your market? Let me show you something here. This is just from a couple of days ago. This is a list of houses going to auction on November 17th. Okay, so, and this is in Maricopa County where I live. The ones in yellow are all houses that have opening bids. These houses got sold at the auction. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 houses. Now imagine if you're in Phoenix and you're watching this. That's 7 people that you could have worked out a deal with before the auction to buy their home. And look at the spreads all the way to the far right. You can see the Zillow values, and to the right, you'll see the opening bids. I mean, the smallest margin on some of these is like 100, and the lowest margin is 150 grand, or no, $95,000, right? Here, let's see. Take my arrow. This is probably the smallest margin right here. Zillow value 235, opening bid 143. So that's about 90 grand. That's it. Look at this one, 769, 200, opening bid 185. All right, so some huge margins here. If you're culling your list, if you're scraping your list and you're only going out and speaking or trying to make contact with these people who are, again, 7 days to 24 hours prior to the auction. All right. So there's definitely opportunity no matter what market you live in. All right. So maybe you're saying, I don't have any money. Do you not have any money? Come on, seriously. I just showed you a case study where I was able to put this house under contract, or basically buy this house for $5,000. You can put $5,000 on a credit card, or you can get cash advances on 3 or 4 credit cards and come up with $5 grand. And I lease optioned this deal in 45 days, got my $5,000 back, and got through my $15,000 option deposit and net $10,000. So just about anybody can put a deal together for $5,000. I mean, you can be able to borrow that money from family member, friend, whatever. Now let's talk about Kyle's deal for a second. He had $22,000 total in the deal. I mean, it took 12 grand to stop the foreclosure and bring the seller's loan current. He gave $10,000 to the seller, $22,000. Most people can find $22,000 to lock up a deal with $200,000 in gross margin. I would hope you could do that. If you couldn't, and you were a client of mine, I would certainly help you out with this. That's for sure. If you're a Rockstar client and you found a deal like this, I would most likely help you out with it, because it's a killer deal. It's a killer deal. And again, it's a good deal for the seller. It's a good deal for Kyle. Do you not have the time? Maybe you're like me. You're thinking, I don't want to go contacting homeowners in foreclosure. I don't have the time to do that. Well, then find and train someone that does have the time, right? Find someone motivated that wants to learn how to do this and train them how to do this. It's not that complicated, right? It's just a matter of having the steps in place and the documentation in place and the understanding of how the process works in your state. Okay, so find someone and train to do it. You can pay them a finder's fee or an assignment fee of some kind, or you can just partner with them, make them a partner or a JV partner or whatever. And then you have some options with the property. You can wholesale it, which we've talked about. You can fix and flip it, or you can buy and hold the property. So really at this point of the webinar, you've got three options, right? Option one is you can just do nothing and keep doing whatever techniques you're using now to find below market deals and risk losing money because I'm telling you right now, in a declining market, they're not going to work anymore. And you're going to risk missing out on the opportunities that are ahead with a looming recession. So that's option one. Option two, you can take what I've taught you here today and try to figure it out on your own and how to implement one of these three recession-proof strategies. Hopefully the third one, because that's my favorite, pre-foreclosures plus subject to. So you can take what I've taught you here today and try to figure it out on your own. Or option three, you can learn from someone that has successfully implemented these strategies and taught others how to do it, which is going to get you results faster without making any mistakes. All right, so if you chose option one, well, you probably didn't choose option one because you wouldn't have made it to the 40-minute mark in this webinar and had on your mind, hey, I'm not doing anything with this education or this information, right? So hopefully, if you're still on this webinar, you're not thinking, yeah, I'm option one. I'm not going to do anything, or I'm just going to keep trying to do what I'm doing before, even though it doesn't work. So you probably didn't even make it to this point. If you chose option two, hey, fantastic. I'm glad you found value in this webinar and that you are going to take what I taught you here today and try to get it sorted out, figured out on your own, and you're at least taking action. That's fantastic, right? I applaud you, and I'd love to hear about your success. Shoot me an email or post on one of my Facebook pages. But if you chose option three, and maybe you're a little bit like me, this is how I am. I want to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible and erase any type of opportunity for me to make a huge mistake. And I want to start making money right away, even if it means investing a little bit in some coaching. So if that's you and you want to drastically reduce your learning curve and you want to get my help with this so you can start here in the next 7 to 14 days, 30 days, start making 10 to 15K a month with one of these recession-proof strategies, here's what you can do. You can book a call with me or somebody on my team if you chose option three. Just go to foreclosuresecrets.net/talk, and I will. You'll be taken to a short survey. I think you're asked, I don't know, 6 or 7 questions, and then you'll go to a calendar and you can book a call with me or someone on my team. We'll do a 45-minute strategy session, and we'll figure out if this is a good fit. If I can help you with your business and get you going here with just a car, a laptop, and a tank of gas here in the next 30 days. So just go to foreclosuresecrets.net/talk, and we will get that strategy session booked, and we can see how we can help you launch your house flipping recession-proof business right away. Again, I'm Marty Boardman, and I appreciate you watching this training, staying to the very end. We got it wrapped up here in under 45 minutes, which I'm very happy about. Hope you found it valuable, entertaining, and educational. And I look forward to talking to you on the strategy session and working together with you soon. Thanks again for watching.